They had been observing human space for months, moving silently through the darkness between stars. Their ships were sleek, silent, and built for stealth, designed to slip past borders without detection. The alien scouts were confident. They had studied countless civilizations, noting their weaknesses and patterns. To them, humans were just another species, unpredictable but ultimately manageable. They assumed humans would send a warning if they cared, or maybe they would not even notice. The scouts believed their mission was simple: cross into human-controlled space, gather data, and retreat before anyone could respond. Inside the command chamber of the largest alien vessel, the leader watched the screens showing human activity. The humans seemed small, almost insignificant against the vastness of space. Their colonies were scattered across planets, moons, and artificial stations, but the aliens calculated that their technology was primitive compared to the alien empire. The leader spoke in a voice that carried authority across the room, stating that no species in the galaxy had ever dared challenge them. Humans would be no exception. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the first signs of intrusion were already visible. High above the atmosphere, human monitoring satellites detected unusual energy patterns. At first, analysts thought it was a solar flare or a natural phenomenon, but the readings were too structured, too deliberate. Military personnel were immediately notified. Command centers buzzed with activity as technicians double-checked the data, confirming what they feared. Something unknown had entered human space without permission. On Earth, the response was calm but firm. Humanity had faced threats before, not from aliens, but from natural disasters and technological accidents. That experience had taught them to act decisively, to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Orders were given to alert planetary defense fleets, and humans began scanning the intruders in detail. They wanted to understand who had crossed into their territory and why. Every human involved knew the stakes were high. This was not a drill. This was real. The alien scouts, unaware of the alert status on Earth, continued their slow advance. They passed through asteroid belts and avoided human colonies with precision, confident that they could remain unnoticed. Their sensors recorded every detail of human activity, from space traffic to energy emissions. They believed they had the advantage. They were careful not to engage or reveal themselves. After all, the mission was reconnaissance, not war. Any sign of detection could jeopardize everything, but humans were patient observers. They didn't need to attack immediately. Instead, they monitored the aliens silently, mapping their routes and studying their technology from afar. Commanders knew that revealing themselves too early could provoke a reaction. Humans had learned from history that patience could be more powerful than brute force. They watched and waited, tracking every movement. Slowly, humans began to formulate a plan. They would not act without warning, but the warning would be unmistakable. The aliens, on their part, felt increasingly confident. Some among them began to argue that humans were too slow, too cautious. They joked about how easy this mission was turning out to be. But a few quieter voices questioned the judgment of their leaders. They had never faced humans directly, and something about the energy patterns detected in human systems felt different. Still, the majority dismissed these doubts. Confidence, after all, was a weapon as sharp as any weapon system. On Earth, the warnings were prepared. Human engineers and communicators worked tirelessly to craft signals in multiple forms: light pulses, radio waves, and coded messages designed to reach the alien ships directly. They made it clear that the intrusion was not welcome. Crossing into human space was not allowed, and further progress could have serious consequences. The messages were firm but polite, leaving room for diplomacy, yet carrying the weight of authority. Humans hoped the aliens would heed the warnings. Back on the alien vessels, the first warning arrived. Screens flickered as a signal cut through the void. a message unlike anything the scouts had ever encountered. It was simple, direct, and demanding. You are entering human territory without permission. Stop your advance or face consequences. The aliens paused, curious and slightly amused. They were not used to such directness from civilizations they considered minor. Some laughed at the idea that humans could threaten them. Others were uneasy but silent, unsure if their instruments could have misread the warning. Despite the warning, the alien leader decided to continue. They saw this as a minor inconvenience, a challenge easily handled if it came to confrontation. After all, they had the superior technology, and humans had not demonstrated the ability to project force this far into space. Orders were given to ignore the warning and proceed, the mission still the top priority. Humans, however, were not ignorant of the alien mindset. They anticipated that warnings might be ignored, which is why multiple channels were used. The alerts were sent repeatedly, with increasing urgency, across every form of communication the humans had mastered. Each message was recorded, time-stamped, and logged. Every human involved understood that patience was nearing its limit, and that if the aliens continued, the consequences would follow as the alien scouts advanced deeper. Their confidence began to waver slightly. Some started to notice the sheer scale of human preparedness. Energy fields, orbital satellites, and patrol drones were positioned in patterns that suggested careful planning and coordination. It was unlike anything the aliens had seen in other civilizations. There was a method to humanity's restraint, a quiet power behind the warnings. On board the alien vessel, debates grew. Some argued for retreat, questioning if the humans could really back up their threats. Others dismissed the concerns as cowardice. But the first seed of doubt had been planted. Humans were unpredictable, not easily intimidated, and their technological approach to defense hinted at something deeper than brute force. The aliens had not experienced a species so disciplined, yet so willing to defend their territory. Earth's commanders, watching all of this unfold, made a critical decision. The warnings would continue, but patience was not infinite. Humans would not attack without reason, but they also would not be ignored. Every calculation, every strategy, had been prepared for this eventuality. Humanity had learned that diplomacy without readiness could lead to disaster. The alien scouts continued, unaware that the humans were already positioning defensive fleets, ready to respond if the final warning was disregarded. The tension was palpable, though unspoken, on both sides. Silence stretched across the void of space, but within it, anticipation crackled like electricity. Both sides were preparing, one for intrusion, the other for enforcement. And so, the first chapter of this confrontation ended in quiet suspense. The aliens had crossed into human space, confident in their mission, unaware that humanity's warnings were not empty threats. Earth had observed, calculated, and prepared. And somewhere, far beyond the planets and moons, the first real test of human patience and resolve had quietly begun. Humans had shown that they did not strike immediately, that they preferred caution and observation. But they also made it clear, through every signal sent, that their patience had limits. They did not make empty threats. They did not give warnings twice. And the aliens, arrogant and untested, were about to learn that lesson in ways they could never have imagined. This was only the beginning. The universe had shifted slightly as human presence, quiet but formidable, made itself known. And the aliens, confident and arrogant, had no idea that crossing into human space would be the moment that tested everything they thought they knew about power, strategy, and survival. The aliens had crossed into human space, and for them, it felt like nothing more than a routine mission. They were confident, believing that humans were slow, predictable, and easy to intimidate. But humans were watching, silently observing every movement, every decision, every shift in energy and position. And now, Humans decided it was time to make their presence known, not with weapons yet, but with words, clear and unwavering. The first warnings reached the alien vessels like invisible waves of authority. Humans had learned the value of communication long ago. They did not want conflict unless it was unavoidable, but they also knew that clear boundaries were crucial. Signals in multiple formats were sent: pulses of light, coded transmissions, and direct messages across frequencies the aliens had never encountered before. Every signal carried the same message: you are entering human territory without permission. Stop your advance immediately, or face consequences. Inside the alien command chamber, the warnings were received with mixed reactions. Some of the scouts laughed, treating it as a joke. Humans? Warnings? They cannot even defend their own planets properly, one of them scoffed. Others were uneasy. There was something different about the tone of the humans. It was not just a warning. It was calm, precise, and unyielding. It was as if humans were speaking from a position of quiet confidence, not fear. That subtle difference unsettled them. The leader of the alien group waved away the unease, insisting that their technology and experience were more than enough to overcome anything humanity could throw at them. Orders were given to ignore the messages and continue. The scouts were told to focus on the mission, gather data, map the territory, and report back. Diplomacy, in their view, was irrelevant when dealing with a species so small and insignificant. Humans, however, were prepared for this. They did not underestimate the aliens, nor did they panic. Instead, every human command center monitored the alien movements carefully, calculating every possible outcome. Humans knew that patience could be a weapon as strong as any laser or missile. The warnings would be repeated, each one more urgent, giving the aliens every chance to turn back before things escalated. This was not a bluff. It was a deliberate strategy. The first warning had been ignored, and so the humans said the second. It was sharper, more insistent, leaving no room for doubt. The message was simple and direct: stop immediately, or humans will respond with force. The aliens received it, but they did not take it seriously. Confidence, they believed, would see them through. After all, they had ignored warnings from countless other civilizations before. Why would humans be any different? As the aliens continued, small cracks began to appear in their confidence. Some scouts noticed the human monitoring grids, satellites, and automated patrols quietly positioning themselves in the corridors of space. These systems were not attacking, but they were watching, calculating, and ready to act. The precision and coordination were unusual. Humans did not move recklessly. They moved deliberately, as if every action was part of a larger plan. For the first time, the aliens realized that humans might not be as simple as they had assumed. Back on Earth, humans prepared the next stage of communication. They intensified the warnings, adding more channels and signals to ensure that no message could be missed. The tone was firm, but not aggressive. Humans wanted the aliens to understand that they could act, and they would act if necessary, but their preference was for the invaders to turn back. Diplomacy and authority were balanced with readiness. Every signal was crafted to show both patience and power. On board the alien ships, unease grew. Some scouts began to question their leaders, asking whether they had misjudged the humans. Others continued to mock the warnings, convinced that these were just words, empty threats from a species they had never taken seriously. But the seed of doubt had been planted. There was something about the human approach that was different, something disciplined, coordinated, and unwavering. Despite the warnings, the alien leader pressed forward. The mission had to be completed. The aliens assumed that humans would eventually back down, that their patience had limits, and that fear would take over. But they did not understand the human psyche. Humans had faced crises before: natural disasters, wars, and pandemics, and had learned to act with both courage and calculation. They did not give empty threats. And they did not repeat warnings without meaning. As the alien ships moved closer to key human territories, humans continued their observation. Every move the aliens made was tracked, analyzed, and stored. Humans wanted to be ready for any scenario, whether it was a retreat, negotiation, or combat. They knew that the aliens were testing them, but humans also understood the importance of strategy. Rushing into confrontation without preparation could have catastrophic consequences. The aliens' arrogance began to show cracks. Some scouts suggested retreat, arguing that humans were more capable than they had expected. Others dismissed these concerns as fear, insisting that their mission was too important to abandon. Tensions rose within the alien ranks as differing opinions clashed. The humans, calmly observing, understood that uncertainty and hesitation could be as powerful as weapons in shaping outcomes. Humans, meanwhile, maintained a careful balance between caution and authority. They did not attack, but they made it clear that patience was not limitless. Every warning, every signal, and every monitoring activity was a message in itself. Humans were not to be underestimated. They were patient, disciplined, and prepared to enforce their boundaries if necessary. And humans knew that sometimes the best defense was a quiet, unwavering stance. For the aliens, ignoring the second warning had consequences beyond simple risk. Confidence was being replaced with doubt. The humans had shown restraint, but also readiness. The scouts could sense that humans had the capability to respond decisively, even without immediate aggression. Something about the humans' patience, combined with their preparation, created a tension that was palpable. Despite their misgivings, the alien leader insisted on continuing the mission. Their plan had to succeed, and they believed that humans would eventually blink. But humans had learned that intimidation did not work on a species willing to defend its territory with precision and strategy. The aliens had underestimated a critical human trait, patience combined with resolve. As the alien ships approached the next boundary of human space, another warning was sent. This one was different. It was not just words, but a demonstration of human coordination. Lights, signals, and movements across satellites and fleets created a pattern the aliens could not ignore. It was subtle, yet unmistakable. Humans were ready to act. The message was clear. One more step, and there would be consequences. Inside the alien vessels, confusion and fear began to spread. The scouts realized that humans were not bluffing, that their warnings were serious. Some of the alien crew tried to argue for retreat, but the leader refused. The mission must continue, they said. Confidence was stubborn, and pride would not allow them to back down. Yet, deep down, doubt had begun to seep in. Humans were not like other civilizations. They were disciplined, patient, and unafraid. For humans, this was a test of both patience and authority. They did not need to act immediately to demonstrate power. The repeated warnings, the careful observation, and the visible readiness all sent a strong message. Humans do not give warnings twice. They do not act recklessly, but they act decisively when necessary. And the aliens, overconfident and arrogant, were about to learn that lesson in a way they had never expected. The tension in space was now palpable. The aliens moved forward, their mission unchanged, but their confidence shaken. Humans watched silently, ready to respond at the exact moment it became necessary. The quiet patience of humanity contrasted sharply with the aliens' arrogance and assumptions. Every human involved knew that the outcome of this encounter could change interstellar dynamics forever. And so, the second chapter of this confrontation ended in anticipation. The aliens had ignored the first warnings, dismissed the second, and moved deeper into human space. But humans had prepared, observed, and made their position clear. There would be no third warning. Humans were patient, but they were also resolute. In the darkness of space, a silent question hung between the two species. Would the aliens finally understand the lesson, or would they force humanity to act? The answer was waiting, and the next steps would determine the fate of this encounter. Humans had shown restraint, clarity, and readiness. They had made it clear that ignoring warnings came at a risk, and that patience had its limits. The aliens, confident yet untested against this kind of determination, were about to find out just how serious humans could be when their territory was crossed. The alien scouts had ignored warnings, confident that humans were too cautious, too slow, and too predictable to pose any real threat. They moved deeper into human space, their sleek ships cutting silently through the void, unaware that every movement was being tracked with precision. What they did not realize was that humans were not rushing into action, but preparing for something far more calculated. Observation had become the key weapon, and patience was their strategy. Humans had anticipated that the aliens might ignore the first warnings, and even the second. But they also knew that patience could break arrogance more effectively than immediate aggression. Every fleet, every satellite, every monitoring station was active, yet invisible to the intruders. Humans observed silently, recording the aliens' speed, trajectory, and patterns of movement. Analysts worked tirelessly, predicting every possible maneuver and preparing contingencies for each scenario. Every human involved understood the stakes. This was no longer just a breach of space. It was a test of control, discipline, and resolve. Inside the alien vessels, confidence began to show cracks. Some scouts noticed the meticulous monitoring and could not ignore the signals anymore. Even though humans had not fired a single shot, their presence was felt everywhere. Automated drones patrolled silently along the borders, keeping a watchful eye on every movement. Satellites formed a mesh of observation, capturing data the aliens could barely comprehend. The aliens started to realize that humans were not simply reacting, they were orchestrating, anticipating, and calculating. Yet the alien leader remained undeterred. Orders were given to continue, to maintain focus on the mission. The arrogance that had guided them so far prevented any thought of retreat. Humans had warned them twice already, and still they persisted. For the leader, giving up now would be admitting weakness, a concept that their entire civilization had been built to avoid. But inside, a growing unease was impossible to ignore. Something about the humans' calm, yet resolute strategy was unfamiliar and uncomfortable. On Earth, the command centers were alive with quiet activity. Humans did not need to attack to assert dominance. Every action, from the movement of fleets to the adjustment of orbital satellites, sent a clear message. Humans were ready. Analysts and commanders tracked the aliens' every shift, building predictive models and contingency plans. Every crew member knew that patience had power, and that restraint, combined with preparation, could speak louder than any weapon. The humans' approach was deliberate, precise, and unflinching. The alien sensors picked up anomalies, and panic quietly spread among some of the scouts. Their instruments showed patterns, signals, and forces they could not fully interpret. It was not aggression, but it carried the weight of preparedness and precision. Humans had built a defense system that could strike in countless ways, but instead they waited, observing. This silent readiness confused the aliens more than a direct attack would have. For the first time, doubt crept into their minds. Some alien scouts began to whisper among themselves. "They are different," one said. "They are patient, but they are not weak." Another added, "We have underestimated them. They do not act rashly, yet they are ready for anything." The whispers spread unease. Arrogance had carried them so far, but now it was being challenged by the calm, calculated determination of humans. The aliens had never faced a species that could observe so quietly, yet hold such quiet power in reserve. That the human strategy was simple, but effective. They had no need to confront immediately. Their fleets shadowed the intruders, moving in synchronized patterns that the aliens could detect but not fully understand. Monitoring systems tracked the aliens' every action, calculating speed, trajectory, and potential maneuvers. Humans prepared for multiple outcomes: retreat, negotiation, or escalation. They were ready to act decisively if the aliens crossed the final boundary. Inside the alien ships, tension grew. The scouts were beginning to question their leaders. Some advocated retreat, suggesting that humans might be stronger than anticipated. Others dismissed these concerns as fear, insisting that the humans could not possibly match their technology or experience. Yet the evidence was mounting. The alien sensors and calculations indicated a presence far more coordinated than any previous civilizations they had encountered. Humans were not reckless, but they were precise and ready. The silence from humans was deceptive. It was not ignorance or weakness. It was patience, calculation, and power held in reserve. Humans had observed the aliens carefully, studied their movements, and prepared a response for any situation. They understood that acting too early could reveal weaknesses or provoke unnecessary conflict. Humans had learned from history that restraint could be a weapon stronger than any fleet or weapon system. As the alien ships moved closer to key human territories, humans began subtle maneuvers, visible enough to be detected, but not overtly aggressive. These movements were designed to signal readiness without forcing the aliens to react immediately. Satellites and drones adjusted positions, creating invisible barriers and observation points. Fleets shifted silently, always just out of range, monitoring every alien decision. Humans wanted to communicate power without aggression, authority without haste. Some alien scouts began to sense the quiet tension. They could feel that humans were ready to act at any moment. The warnings had been ignored, yet no attack had come. This unusual approach unsettled the aliens, shaking confidence in ways they had never experienced. The calm patience of humans was more threatening than any direct confrontation could be. It carried the weight of certainty, strategy, and the knowledge that humans did not issue warnings lightly. Back on Earth, human analysts continued to refine their predictions. Every movement of the aliens was recorded, analyzed, and incorporated into strategy simulations. Humans were not reacting, they were orchestrating. Every pattern, every shift in the aliens' formation, every hesitation was carefully studied. They were preparing for all possible outcomes, ready to respond decisively if provoked. Humans had learned that observation and preparation could prevent mistakes, reduce risk, and ensure victory without a single premature strike. Inside the alien vessels, the tension reached a breaking point. Confidence, once absolute, had begun to falter. The scouts could feel the humans' silent control, the invisible hand guiding the encounter. Some began to question whether they had underestimated humanity. They had assumed humans would react hastily or unpredictably, but instead, humans were methodical, calm, and ready. The alien leader struggled to maintain authority, but the doubts were spreading. Humans continued their quiet strategy. The warnings had been clear, repeated, and precise. They had been ignored, but humans were still patient. Observation had revealed weaknesses, strengths, and patterns in the aliens' behavior. Humans had all the time they needed to prepare for the next step, whether it would be negotiation, demonstration, or action. Patience was a weapon, and humanity wielded it expertly. The aliens realized, slowly, that they were no longer just observing humans. They were being observed, studied, and tested. Every move they made was anticipated. The humans were not afraid, not rash, but fully aware. Their patience was strategic, their calmness deliberate, and their readiness absolute. The arrogance of the alien scouts, once unshakable, began to crack under the weight of human discipline and precision. For humans, this stage of the encounter was critical. They had demonstrated restraint, authority, and patience. They had made it clear that warnings were serious and not to be ignored. They had observed every movement, predicted every possible reaction, and prepared for the worst. Humans understood that power was not only in weapons, It was in patience, clarity, and precise preparation. Inside the alien command chambers, tension was palpable. The scouts realized that humans were not reckless or easily intimidated. Their quiet observation carried a power that was impossible to ignore. Confidence had begun to fade, replaced by uncertainty and fear. They had assumed humans would react predictably, but instead they were facing a species that could wait, observe, and act decisively when the time came. The stage was set. Humans had used patience, observation, and strategic preparation to gain control of the situation without a single shot fired. The aliens, arrogant and overconfident, were now forced to confront the reality that humans were disciplined, patient, and fully capable of enforcing their boundaries. The first real test of human strategy had succeeded. The intruders had begun to feel the power of a species that does not give warnings twice. The aliens moved cautiously now, aware that each step was being watched. Their arrogance had been tempered by observation, their confidence shaken by patience. Humans continued their quiet orchestration, ready to act if necessary, but still holding back. The encounter had shifted from mere intrusion to a demonstration of human authority, precision, and resolve. And in the darkness of space, both sides understood something fundamental. Humans were patient, but their patience had limits. They did not act rashly, but they acted decisively. Warnings were not idle words, and boundaries were not suggestions. The aliens had been observed, measured, and tested, and humanity had made it clear that they would not tolerate disregard for their space. This was the true power of humanity. Not weapons, not aggression, but patience. The aliens had ignored every warning, their arrogance leading them deeper into human space. They believed their technology and experience would keep them safe. But humans had been patient, observing, calculating, and preparing for this very moment. And now, humanity decided it was time to show that warnings were not empty words. The first stage of action would not be reckless, it would be precise, calculated, an overwhelming dot from Earth and its colonies. Humans activated a network of satellites and fleets that had been positioned silently throughout the intruded sectors. Automated systems hummed to life, lasers and energy grids began their calibration, and communication lines pulsed with commands ready to coordinate hundreds of ships simultaneously. Every human involved understood their role. This was not chaos. It was a symphony of calculated readiness, a demonstration of strategy, patience, and power. The aliens, still confident, noticed the first signs of change. Fleets that had been invisible before now moved subtly, forming patterns that hinted at coordinated preparation. Satellites adjusted their positions, projecting energy signatures and observation fields that mapped every alien ship. The scouts had never seen anything like this. It was not an attack yet, but the humans' presence was undeniable, visible, and overwhelming in its precision. The realization hit slowly. Humans had been planning for this moment all along. Humans sent one final warning, but this one carried a weight the aliens could feel. It was not just a message, it was a demonstration of capability. Energy signals lit the space around the aliens' ships, showing them that every movement was being tracked and that humans could respond instantly. The words were clear, calm, and authoritative. You have been warned. Any further intrusion will be met with decisive action. Inside the alien vessels, tension erupted. Some scouts pleaded for retreat, arguing that humans might have far more power than previously calculated. Others tried to maintain confidence, insisting that they could handle whatever the humans had prepared. But doubt had taken root. Confidence, once absolute, had begun to fracture. Humans had shown patience, but also readiness, and the combination was unnerving. The humans did not wait for aggression to begin. They moved with precision, disabling alien surveillance systems before a single shot was fired. Communication networks that the aliens relied on were jammed and rerouted without warning. Navigation systems flickered as humans subtly disrupted them, showing control over systems the aliens had assumed were invulnerable. The scouts realized, too late, that humans had been prepared to act for weeks, calculating every possibility. The first true demonstration of human power came when automated defense grids targeted the alien ship's propulsion systems. Lasers struck with surgical precision, disabling engines without harming crews. Alien vessels drifted silently, unable to maneuver, and panic spread across the ranks. The humans had acted decisively, but not recklessly. The intruders were not destroyed, yet they were immobilized, controlled, and clearly shown that their intrusion had consequences. Humans then deployed monitoring drones around the alien ships. These drones were small, nearly invisible, but packed with sensors and communication devices. They relayed every movement, every adjustment, back to Earth in real time. Humans could anticipate the aliens' next decisions before they were made, demonstrating that they had complete control of the situation. The aliens, once arrogant, were now disoriented. They had never faced a species that combined patience, calculation, and precision in such a way. The alien leader called for action, desperate to regain control, but their systems were compromised. Humans had disabled navigation and communication, showing the intruders that even without direct combat, they were fully vulnerable. Crew members whispered among themselves, realizing their mission had become impossible. Confidence was replaced with fear. They had underestimated humanity, and now they faced the consequences. Earth's commanders observed every detail. They had not intended to destroy the aliens. They wanted to teach a lesson, to make it clear that warnings were serious and should never be ignored. Every move, every strike, was measured and deliberate. Humans understood that showing restraint while demonstrating power was more effective than outright destruction. They wanted the aliens to understand, clearly and permanently, that humanity did not repeat warnings. The aliens' attempts to counterattack failed. Their weapons were limited, their strategies predictable, and their systems compromised. The humans anticipated every move, neutralizing threats before they could materialize. The scouts realized that they had never encountered a civilization like this one that could observe, calculate, and strike with precision while maintaining restraint. Fear replaced arrogance, and the mission that had seemed simple became a nightmare. Human forces then established control over key areas of the intruded sectors. They positioned fleets to block escape routes and set up observation points to monitor every alien action. The aliens drifted helplessly, realizing that humans had mastered the art of control without overt aggression. It was a lesson in power, patience, and strategy that the intruders could never have predicted. Within the alien vessels, panic spread. Crew members argued over what to do, but every option had already been anticipated by humans. The realization hit hard. They had been outmatched without even realizing it. Humans had waited, observed, and acted with precision, showing control over systems the aliens thought were untouchable. The arrogance that had guided them had led to complete vulnerability. Humans communicated one final message before taking further action. It was calm, firm, and undeniable. Your intrusion ends here. Any attempt to proceed will result in total incapacitation. You have ignored warnings, and now you face the consequences. The aliens, finally understanding the reality of their situation, could do nothing but comply. The humans had made their point. Patience, preparation, and calculated action had turned arrogance into submission. The aliens attempted to retreat, but humans controlled the exit routes. Navigation interference ensured that escape was slow and deliberate, giving humans complete oversight. The intruders realized that resistance was futile. Their mission, once thought simple, had become a lesson in humility. Humans had not only defended their space, they had demonstrated that warnings were serious, and that patience should never be mistaken for weakness. Humans had not destroyed the alien ships. That was not the goal. The objective had been to show control, capability, and strategy. Every human involved understood that decisive action without recklessness was the key to establishing authority. The aliens had learned, through immobilization and control rather than destruction, that crossing into human space came with consequences. The final stage of this operation involved securing the alien vessels and monitoring their movements as they retreated under controlled conditions. Humans ensured that no further intrusion could occur without immediate detection. Every signal, every movement was tracked and recorded, creating a permanent record of the encounter. This was more than defense. It was a demonstration of human capability, patience, and strategic intelligence. For the aliens, the lesson was clear. Humans did not give empty warnings. They observed, calculated, and acted decisively when necessary. Their patience was a weapon, and their restraint was a demonstration of control. The arrogance that had guided the intruders had been shattered, replaced by the undeniable understanding that humanity was a force to be respected and feared. On Earth, humans did not celebrate recklessly. They had achieved their goal without unnecessary destruction, demonstrating restraint, strategy, and authority. Commanders reviewed the operation, ensuring that every detail was logged and every lesson learned. Humanity had shown that they could act decisively, but also with precision and consideration. This was the mark of a species that did not threaten lightly, but would enforce its boundaries without hesitation. The aliens drifted away from human space, shaken, humiliated, and fully aware that their assumptions had been wrong. They had assumed humans would react rashly or fear confrontation. Instead, humans had acted with calm precision, showing power without unnecessary violence. The scouts would never forget this encounter. They had crossed into human space and discovered that patience, preparation, and calculated action could be far more dangerous than any reckless attack. Humans, meanwhile, returned to observation and readiness. The demonstration had been successful, but vigilance remained. Every movement of alien fleets would continue to be monitored, and humans knew that future threats might arise. The encounter had shown the universe a new truth. Humanity did not give warnings twice. They acted when necessary, and they acted with precision, strategy, and unwavering resolve. The stage was set for the future. Humans had shown that patience, intelligence, and control could achieve what brute force alone could not. The aliens had learned their lesson the hard way, and the rest of the galaxy would take note. Humanity's presence had been marked, their boundaries defended, and their capabilities demonstrated. The lesson was clear. Do not underestimate the patience, strategy, and decisive power of humans. The aliens had retreated from human space, their mission a failure, and their confidence shattered. What had seemed like a simple reconnaissance or exploration had turned into a lesson in humility. Humans had not only defended their territory, but had done so with precision, strategy, and patience, demonstrating that warnings were not empty words. The aftermath of the confrontation was now unfolding, and its effects would reach far beyond the immediate encounter. Back on Earth, humans reviewed every detail of the incident. Analysts studied the alien movements, their reactions to the warnings, and the way they had responded to human intervention. Every action the humans had taken was recorded, assessed, and catalogued. Commanders knew that knowledge was as important as weapons, and understanding the aliens' behavior would prepare them for any future threats. Humans had proven their readiness, but they also wanted to ensure that nothing was left to chance. The retreating alien vessels were observed continuously. Humans did not attack further, but every movement was tracked in real time. The aliens had experienced the consequences of their arrogance and had learned, painfully, that humanity did not give warnings twice. But humans understood that knowledge of the aliens' reactions could be used strategically. Every adjustment the aliens made was noted, every hesitation recorded. The humans' patience had turned the confrontation into a teaching moment, not just a defensive victory. Across human colonies, communication channels were filled with reports and updates. Every planet, station, and fleet shared information to ensure that all humans understood what had happened. The message was clear. Humans had defended their space decisively, without unnecessary violence, demonstrating strategy, patience, and authority. This event was now a case study for future generations, a lesson in how calculated action could enforce boundaries without reckless destruction. Meanwhile, the aliens struggled to comprehend what had happened. Their scouts had never faced a species capable of such restraint and precision. They had assumed humans would panic, attack hastily, or negotiate in fear. Instead, humans had observed, prepared, and acted with exact timing, demonstrating control without unnecessary aggression. Among the alien ranks, discussions were tense. Some suggested returning to retaliate, but the leadership understood that humans were not just capable, they were unpredictable, patient, and fully aware of every movement. The aftermath also affected interstellar politics. News of the confrontation traveled quickly to neighboring civilizations. The aliens had underestimated humans, and word of their failure spread. Humanity's reputation shifted overnight. Where before they had been seen as cautious and somewhat isolated, they were now recognized as disciplined, strategic, and formidable. Diplomats from other civilizations began to reevaluate alliances, trade agreements, and the potential threat that humans could pose if provoked. Humans had defended their territory without a fight. Yet the display of strategy and precision sent a clear message. Underestimating humanity was dangerous. On Earth, humans maintained a heightened level of vigilance. The confrontation had been resolved, but lessons had been learned. Defense protocols were updated, strategies reviewed, and every communication system was reinforced. Humans knew that the galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes hostile. But they also knew that patience, preparation, and decisive action could achieve far more than panic or aggression. The aliens' retreat was not just a victory, it was a confirmation that human strategy worked. The aliens, now back in their own space, reflected on their failures. They realized that arrogance had blinded them, that they had underestimated a species they thought was insignificant. The lesson was clear. Humans did not react recklessly, but when provoked, they acted with precision and authority. The encounter had shifted the aliens' perception of humanity. They had been confronted by a species that combined patience with power, strategy with calm, and observation with decisive action. Meanwhile, humans continued to strengthen their defenses. They expanded monitoring networks, improved fleet coordination, and refined protocols to ensure that future threats could be handled even more efficiently. Observation and preparation had been key to this encounter, and humans understood that readiness must always be paired with patience and strategy. This confrontation had demonstrated the effectiveness of restraint when combined with authority, and humans were determined to maintain this approach. Diplomatic channels were also activated. Humans sent messages to nearby civilizations, explaining the incident and clarifying their position. The message was firm but not aggressive. Human space was not to be violated. Warnings would be given, and consequences would follow if those warnings were ignored. Other civilizations took notice. The story of the aliens' failed intrusion spread, and humans' reputation as disciplined but formidable defenders grew. Alliances were reconsidered, treaties strengthened, and the political landscape shifted subtly. Acknowledging that humans had demonstrated both power and restraint, the aliens' return was tense and uncertain. Their leadership analyzed every aspect of the failure, from the warnings that were ignored to the precise way humans had disabled their systems. Questions arose among the scouts. How had humans managed such coordination? How had they anticipated every possible maneuver? Fear and respect began to mix in their ranks. The encounter had been more than a simple warning. It had been a demonstration of a species' ability to control a situation with strategy, not just force. Humans, however, did not celebrate recklessly. There was satisfaction, of course, in having defended their space, but the focus remained on preparedness and vigilance. Lessons were extracted, improvements implemented, and the incident analyzed from every possible angle. Humans understood that victory was not just about immediate outcomes. It was about establishing authority, demonstrating capability, and ensuring that the galaxy understood the rules of engagement in human space. In the colonies, people shared stories of the event, not to glorify violence, but to illustrate the importance of discipline, observation, and preparation. Humans had faced an unknown threat and had responded without panic or rash action. The lesson was clear. Strength came from strategy and patience, not recklessness. Communities took pride in knowing that humanity could defend itself decisively, while still maintaining control and responsibility. Meanwhile, the aliens began to reconsider their strategies for the future. They realized that humans could not be underestimated, that patience and precision were as powerful as weapons. Their confidence had been shaken, and the realization that humans would not tolerate disrespect or intrusion had become ingrained. Reports to their leadership emphasized caution, observation, and respect for boundaries. The encounter had forced the aliens to acknowledge a truth they had not expected. Humanity was not just capable, they were formidable in ways the aliens had never predicted. On Earth, humans reflected on the broader implications. The confrontation had proven that patience and preparation could achieve what brute force alone could not. Humans had defended their territory, enforced boundaries, and demonstrated strategic intelligence, all without unnecessary destruction. This approach had preserved life, minimized risk, and sent a clear message to the galaxy. Humans had acted decisively, but they had done so with control, precision, and foresight. The aftermath also reinforced the human belief in observation and strategy as tools of power. Every encounter, every challenge, every threat could be addressed effectively when humans combined patience with preparation. The alien intrusion had been a test, and humans had passed with remarkable efficiency. They had proven that warnings were not idle threats, that patience was a weapon, and that restraint could be as powerful as aggression when used wisely. For the aliens, the retreat was more than a tactical withdrawal. It was a lesson in respect and caution. They had underestimated humans, ignored warnings, and paid the price. The knowledge of human strategy and precision would influence their actions for generations. They had learned that humanity was unpredictable, patient, and capable of decisive action when necessary. The encounter would be studied, remembered, and incorporated into alien strategy as a warning. Do not cross into human space uninvited. Humans, meanwhile, continued to expand their influence cautiously. Observation, preparation, and strategy became core principles of defense and diplomacy. They understood that the galaxy was vast and full of potential threats, but they also knew that measured action, discipline, and intelligence could maintain security without unnecessary conflict. The encounter with the aliens had not just defended human space, it had established a standard for engagement, warning, and authority that would guide humanity for years to come. The aliens' failure and retreat sent ripples through the interstellar community. Other civilizations began to reassess their assumptions about humans. Where once humanity had been seen as cautious and reactive, they were now recognized as disciplined, strategic, and capable of enforcing their boundaries decisively. Alliances shifted, treaties were reconsidered, and a new respect for human capability emerged. The galaxy had learned a simple but powerful lesson. Humans do not give warnings twice, and ignoring them comes at a cost. Humans, despite the recognition and respect from others, remained vigilant. They strengthened defenses, refined The aliens had retreated, leaving human space secure, but the story was far from over. The impact of the confrontation stretched beyond immediate defense. It had reshaped perceptions, alliances, and expectations across the galaxy. Humans had shown restraint, precision, and authority, proving that warnings were serious and that patience was not weakness. Now, the final chapter of this encounter would show how humanity solidified its reputation and prepared for the future. On Earth, humans carefully analyzed the aftermath. Every signal, movement, and decision made during the confrontation was reviewed. Analysts studied how the aliens had responded to the warnings and to human action. Commanders examined each tactic, each coordination between fleets and satellites, and every system that had been used to disable alien navigation and communication. Humans knew that knowledge gained from this encounter could prevent future threats and strengthen their strategies. Every lesson learned would be applied to ensure the security of human space for generations. The aliens, meanwhile, were returning to their own territories, their confidence shaken, their arrogance replaced by cautious respect. Among them, discussions were tense. Some questioned how a seemingly small and isolated species could coordinate such precise actions, anticipate their every move, and demonstrate control without even resorting to widespread destruction. They had learned a painful truth. Humans were not reckless. They were strategic, and their patience made them more dangerous than many other civilizations the aliens had encountered. Humans did not rest after the confrontation. Fleets continued to patrol, satellites monitored space constantly, and observation systems were upgraded. This vigilance was not born of fear, but of strategy. Humanity had proven its ability to defend its space, but the galaxy was unpredictable, and threats could emerge at any time. Humans understood that power without preparation was meaningless. Their patience, discipline, and readiness had won this encounter, but they knew the importance of sustaining that advantage. Diplomatic channels were opened across nearby civilizations. Humans communicated the facts of the encounter calmly and clearly. They emphasized that human space was protected, that warnings were issued seriously, and that ignoring them had consequences. This communication was firm, yet non-aggressive, designed to convey authority without provoking unnecessary conflict. Other civilizations took notice. Humans had not only defended themselves, they had demonstrated a level of coordination, discipline, and strategic intelligence that demanded respect. The alien leadership, having studied the encounter, began sending reports throughout their empire. Their assessment was clear. Humans were a species that combined patience, calculation, and decisive action. They did not react impulsively, yet they were fully capable of enforcing their boundaries when necessary. The report spread fear, caution, and respect across the alien empire. Humans had set a precedent, an unmistakable lesson that any future aggression would be met with precise and overwhelming response. Back on Earth, humans celebrated quietly, not with excessive fanfare, but with acknowledgement of their achievement. The confrontation had been resolved without catastrophic loss of life, demonstrating the effectiveness of strategy over raw aggression. Communities shared the story of the encounter, emphasizing lessons in observation, patience, and calculated response. It became a tale not of war, but of intelligence, foresight, and human capability. The story reminded everyone that humanity's greatest strength was not in reckless power, but in disciplined action and strategic patience. The aliens' retreat also influenced interstellar politics. Neighboring civilizations, witnessing the outcome, began reassessing their assumptions about humans. Where humans had once been seen as cautious or limited in influence, they were now recognized as strategic, disciplined, and formidable. Alliances shifted, treaties were strengthened, and many civilizations approached humans with newfound respect. The galaxy had learned a vital lesson. Patience and strategy could be more powerful than immediate aggression. and humanity exemplified this principle perfectly. Humans, however, remained humble. They understood that one confrontation did not define their species entirely, nor did it make them invincible. They continued training, observation, and preparation. Human scientists refined their technology. Fleet commanders improved coordination strategies, and communication systems were fortified. The lessons from this encounter were integrated into every aspect of defense and diplomacy. The galaxy had witnessed human capability, but humans knew that readiness was continuous work, not a one-time accomplishment. Meanwhile, the aliens adjusted their strategies for future interactions. They recognized that humanity would not be easily intimidated or tricked. Warnings would now be taken seriously, and intrusion into human space would be approached with extreme caution. Their perception of humans had changed from underestimation to respect, tinged with a cautious fear of human patience and precision. They had learned that humanity's power lay not only in weapons or numbers, but in calculated action, observation, and strategic discipline. Humans also expanded interstellar cooperation with allies who had observed the confrontation. Knowledge sharing, joint monitoring systems, and coordinated defenses became more common. Humans understood that diplomacy, intelligence, and cooperation were powerful tools, complementing their ability to act decisively when necessary. The galaxy had witnessed human capability, but humans worked quietly to strengthen the foundations of peace, security, and influence. In colonies across human space, the story of the encounter became a teaching moment. Children, scholars, and military trainees studied the incident to understand the value of patience, observation, and strategy. The lesson was clear. Acting without calculation could lead to disaster, while measured, precise action could achieve victory without unnecessary destruction. Humanity had shown that warnings were serious. Patience was a weapon, and restraint could be more powerful than aggression. The aliens' perspective continued to shift over time. They had underestimated humanity once, and they would never make the same mistake again. Reports circulated about the efficiency of human strategy, their ability to coordinate fleets silently, and their patience under pressure. The aliens began to factor human behavior into all future planning. They understood that humans could enforce boundaries decisively, and any attempt at disregard would meet calculated, unavoidable consequences. Humans, however, were not driven by fear or desire for domination. They focused on readiness, strategy, and maintaining balance. They had defended their space effectively and sent a clear message to the galaxy, but their approach emphasized observation, careful calculation, and measured action. Humans understood that real power was not only in showing strength, but in knowing when and how to act. This philosophy had been validated during the alien confrontation, and it became a guiding principle for human space operations. The aliens, reflecting on their failure, began a long-term process of adaptation. They studied human strategies, communication patterns, and operational discipline. They recognized that humans did not rush into conflict, but when provoked, they acted with precision and authority. This understanding reshaped interstellar relations, making humans a respected, and in some cases, feared species. Humanity had demonstrated that patience and preparation could enforce boundaries more effectively than immediate aggression ever could. Humans also strengthened their reputation across the galaxy. Neighboring civilizations now regarded human space as secure, highly organized, and difficult to challenge. Diplomats emphasized that humanity valued peace and observation, but would act decisively if provoked. This approach earned respect, reinforced alliances, and ensured that human influence extended beyond raw power. Humans had demonstrated that strategy, patience, and precision were the cornerstones of their strength. Back on Earth, leaders reflected on the long-term significance of the encounter. They had faced a species that underestimated humans, and they had demonstrated the full extent of their capability. But more importantly, humans had proven a principle. Patience, observation, and calculated action could achieve outcomes that brute force alone could not. The aliens had learned this lesson. The galaxy had learned this lesson. And humanity would carry this lesson forward in every aspect of space exploration, defense, and diplomacy. The encounter also changed the mindset of humans themselves. People understood that their species was not just reactive but proactive, capable of planning, observing, and acting decisively when required. The confrontation became a symbol of human ingenuity, discipline, and resilience. It reminded every human that strength was not only in technology or fleets, but in patience, preparation, and the ability to act at the right moment with precision. For the aliens, the retreat became a permanent marker in history. Their arrogance had been tempered, their assumptions challenged, and their respect for humans firmly established. They would remember that humans did not give warnings twice, and that ignoring them came with consequences. The lesson was clear, permanent, and universal. Patience combined with strategic action made humans a force to be reckoned with. Humans, on the other hand, continued to prepare, observe, and maintain vigilance. They had defended their space, demonstrated strategy, and shown restraint. The encounter